Sorry about that, friend.
Sorry about that. I just accidentally hung up the phone instead of pressing unmute. Anyways,
Technical difficulties.
here we are. I was just going on a spiel about how you can catch us on Instagram Live because we are hosting this webinar behind the scenes. You can kind of see what we look like and what our office kind of looks like. So that's kind of fun. But let's get started since we're a couple minutes late now. So hello from Union Metrics. My name is Rebecca Allen. I'm the marketing manager here, and I have my colleague Sarah Parker.
Hello, it is me.
Sarah, can you maybe give us a background on what your experience was like on social media?
Sure. So I started, way back in the day, 10 years ago, as an intern at Bazaar Voice. I did some of their social media. Was with Union Metrics for almost 5 years, and we joined the Trendkite family this summer. So now I'm the content marketing manager, but still running social for Union Metrics and for Trendkite. And I've also worked for a small local chain of yoga studios. So I have experience with small and large companies, with budget and no budget, all that kind of stuff.
So you have lots of expertise. I'm excited to hear it today. So before we get started, here is the agenda. We're going to be talking about, how brands are using Instagram, some of the big changes they made in 2018 because there were a lot.
Yes.
Kind of the trends we expect to take off in 2019, some mistakes you're going to want to avoid when planning your strategy, tips you want to consider, and some success stories.
Yeah.
And finally, we'll wrap it up with how analytics can really help you hone in your strategy.
We are always willing to provide those if you're interested.
Of course. And before we kind of go into the webinar, if you have any questions, please enter them in the GoToWebinar control panel, and we will get to them at the end, and perhaps throughout too, as we see them come in.
Yeah, Instagram, you can also leave us questions, but we'll see if we get to them or not, because unfortunately you're across the room.
Yeah. And we'll also be recording the webinar, so we will distribute that following the webinar. And also we're launching some polls, so pay attention. Yes, we're actually going to jump right in with a poll because I want to hear about how your brands are using Instagram. Mm-hmm. So what is your brand's main focus on Instagram? And I'm going to leave that poll up for a little bit.
This way we can help you focus on what you're interested in knowing more about, rather than us just guessing.
Yeah. So leave it up for just a few minutes. Well, not a minute, a few seconds.
Yeah, and Instagram, if any of you have some feedback for us, let us know. I can come over there and read the tiny screen. What you're focusing on Instagram right now, or what you're planning on focusing on in 2019. We're excited to know all about it.
All right. The results are pretty clear. We have about 80% voted. So I'm going to close the poll and share the results. So it looks like 84% building brand awareness. Does that surprise you at all?
No, because it has been kind of a struggle if you're running a brand on Instagram. We're trying to keep up with all of the changes, especially if you have a smaller team. Even if you're using Instagram a lot on a personal basis, some of the things you're going to do for a brand are going to be different. Like, you'll know how all of the features work and everything, but you're not always sure how exactly you should apply those. Trying to keep up with all of the algorithm changes and other things like that can be a little frustrating. So just trying to get your brand out there and keep it out there is definitely a good focus for most people.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's good because it kind of sets the conversation about today. And so, let's see. Make sure that the poll is closed, hide results. Now moving on. What are some of the changes that we've seen in Instagram over 2018?
So everyone's going to remember the big one. We had an emergency webinar. That feels like it was 10 years ago.
I know.
It was just a couple of months. Without warning, Instagram shut down their old API that it still exists a little bit. There's like a trickle coming out of it. It will be deprecated next month completely. And if you're going to use any Instagram API, you have to use the Graph API. And you have to verify that you have a business account and lots of things like that in order to get any kind of analytics from it. So that was a big shift. If you want to learn more about that in detail, you can watch our emergency webinar. It is ungated. It's on unionmetrics.com/resources. So you can see everything that changed. And they did just announce another change, which we're going to talk about later. Yeah, that was a big one for the year because it changed what kinds of listening are possible on Instagram. And so that also changed some strategy approaches.
And the goal with that was to protect privacy. And
yes, for sure, because after Cambridge Analytica and a lot of other brands having some difficulties with user data being exposed in unexpected ways, it's basically trying to hide personally identifiable information while still trying to make some things useful to brands who want to build their awareness on Instagram.
Great. Now scheduling posts ahead of time. That's pretty exciting, right?
Yes, this finally is a feature that's available. However, it is not available directly through Instagram. You can, really, I'm more of a hands-on person. I like to do things directly. So I tend to just make drafts in Instagram, and then I will set a calendar reminder for when I want to post it, because that way you have access to all of the features. There are, like Hootsuite and Buffer, you can schedule some posts ahead of time, but you don't have access to all of the features. There's a few other tools that let you do this as well, but the features can be limited. Sometimes you can only post a photo, you can't post a video, you can't use location data, you can't tag anyone.
Okay.
So it does limit things a little bit. You also have to be a business profile in order to use this. So if you're just a person who wanted to do it, it's not really an option. You have to switch over to a business profile, make sure that it's tied to a Facebook page, and do all of that.
All right. And now the algorithm, which everyone's always trying to figure out.
And unfortunately, I can't tell you any secrets here that aren't, we've written about it on the blog a lot this year. There's some posts from earlier that we really don't have any updated information since then. They are always sort of tinkering with it, but we don't have anything confirmed. So that's why I always say it's best to experiment to see what's working with your audience and keep building on that. But we do know from a talk that someone at Instagram gave last year, the last verifiable information we have about how it works is that it weighs who you comment on regularly, who you DM regularly, who you search for, because that means you're obviously interested. Like maybe you're at a party and you're like, oh, you got to check out this guy on Instagram. He's really entertaining, something like that. So those factors are all presumably weighted. We don't know how much each of them are weighted or anything like that, but it stands to reason that you want to pay attention to things like people are DMing your brand. That's important. Make sure you're checking the extra box if you don't have that fully updated. They've updated the way that businesses receive messages, so it's less likely you'll miss them. But some people still have an older version of Instagram if they haven't updated, so you want to do that. Things like that. Cool. Oh, and because stories, when you respond to a story, it becomes a DM. That's a really good incentive for your brand to use those features, because when people respond to it, that means they're interested and engaged with your brand. So it's more likely they're going to see more of your content going forward.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Mm-hmm. And we have lots of suggestions for stories.
Oh, yeah.
Just a bit,
because they're so much fun.
So there are tons of new features. I don't even have all of them listed here.
Yes.
What are your favorite ones?
Lots and lots of stuff to play with. Stories have been around for a while now, but it feels like people are just getting into a good groove for using them. They keep adding new things to stories, so always check out if you haven't played with doing polls, if you haven't played with questions, things like that. Those do come to you as DMs a lot of the time, so that's a good way, again, to boost your brand and your target audience's feed. You can also add hashtags and things to your bio now. So that's a good way if you have a branded hashtag, especially that you want, because you can also follow hashtags in your feed. Make sure that's in your bio. Tell your customers and your target audience to use it. And if it's some of the top posts from that will show up in your feed. So that's a good way to just casually keep an eye on how people are using your branded hashtag, or maybe an industry hashtag. You can casually keep an eye on that just as you're using the app, which is fantastic. They now have shoppable posts, which is great for lots of B2C brands are using that.
I'm seeing that everywhere these days.
Yes.
But maybe that's because I follow a lot of clothing brands.
Yeah, you also have name tags, which I haven't seen a lot of people using in real life, but that doesn't mean they aren't. It's a quick way to follow someone. If you're doing any sort of brand activation in real life and someone brings a friend who doesn't really know about it, you could say like, oh, hey, you want all the perks that are, you know, in real life event, just to make sure you follow us on Instagram first. So that'd be a quick, easy way to do that if you like to combine your in-person and online campaigns and events. IGTV is Instagram's response to YouTube, more of a long-form video thing. They're still kind of finding the balance there, but I am seeing more people using that. We'll talk about some examples of that later.
Yeah.
And those are really the big ones that have rolled out over the past year or so.
Okay. So keeping those updates in mind, there's sure to be new ones to come in 2019. So what are we kind of looking at?
There's a lot that is happening for sure. Data privacy is definitely still at the forefront of everyone's mind. I just looked at eMarketer has a new survey out about that. It's like the top thing that CMOs are concerned about, which is good because the GDPR has come into effect. We know that California is looking at a similar law. Probably some other laws in the U.S. will be soon to follow. So you really want to take a privacy-first approach. Just, you know, don't be creepy, don't be shady. Make sure you're protecting any sort of consumer data. And also keep in mind that any social platforms are also going to have to do this. So that might change the kind of data that is available to you, and you will have to adjust your strategy accordingly.
Cool.
Yeah, we also expect to see more vertical video with IGTV is pretty much exclusively in that format. So because people watch on their phones, that's usually easier to do, especially if you're commuting or something like that. Don't watch it in your car if you're driving, obviously. But and there's a lot more AR filters. You know, people have loved that on Snapchat. They've added that to Instagram stories. We're actually using a really subtle one on our live video right now, if you've noticed.
Thanks.
Yeah. There's also probably going to be more brands that are going to start using Instagram shopping. We're going to see more and more brands might take a little bit longer to launch on IGTV as we see influencers and other people kind of figuring out their strategy there. Brands usually do a little studying before they do that, but I'm sure we'll see some interesting creative takes with that from some brands. The people who have a little bit more budget, a little bit more of an experimental mindset, we'll see what they're doing and then see what works, and we can all, you know, copy that and apply it in ways that work for our brand, not just straight up copy it. At least that's my personal advice. Stories, again, Facebook really wants to make stories a big focus. I don't know how much that's going to work on Facebook itself, but we've definitely seen a huge success with it on Instagram. So if your brand isn't using stories a lot, definitely do that. As I've already mentioned, it's a good way to get interactions from your audience, which boosts you favorably in their feed from our understanding of how the algorithm works. And really the most important, biggest thing that we're seeing kind of across the board, but especially with Instagram and social media, is that people are paying more attention to analytics and wanting higher quality analytics and applying that to their strategy, because obviously it's a lot more helpful to build what you're doing based on real data rather than, you know, gut level guesses.
Yeah, and so going back to the stories, I feel like in the beginning they were pretty experimental, and a lot of people are just using them behind the scenes, which is great. Brands still are, but I feel like I also have seen way more investment into them too. Production value.
You can really do either angle. Behind the stories, it's great. People do, I mean, and you can do both. You don't have to pick. Brands can really do a lot of fun behind the scenes stuff, like especially if you are a brand that has a really fun office, if you're working with some influencers, like you can either have an influencer take over your stories, which is always really fun, or if they're in your office or doing some event, it's fantastic for things like that because it does have like less of a requirement to be polished. You can do a little more off the cuff fun, use the GIFs. Like obviously they made an aesthetic choice with the gifts that they put as an option in stories, where they're all kind of like goofy and pixelated, like they're not, you're supposed to have more fun with it, but you can also do highly produced, polished content, and people like that as well. So you can just sort of play it by ear with each campaign that you're doing, with the type of event that you're doing, and see what's working and the kind of feedback that you get.
Great. So let's talk about some of the mistakes we want to avoid this year.
Avoid these mistakes.
Yes. Looking at our little emoji friend.
Yes.
We don't want to rely on hashtags for listening, thanks to that fun API chain.
So we do have a little bit of updated information on this.
Yeah.
We still don't recommend relying on hashtags for listening the way that you used to be able to with the old API. That is no longer possible. Instagram, or Facebook, because they own Instagram, did just make an announcement a week or two ago that they are going to release a new Instagram hashtag API specifically. It is going to have some restrictions. So you have to be a business account in order to use it, and it's going to be like a rolling 7-day window, up to 30 hashtags. So it's not as expensive as the old API. Again, that is going to be completely deprecated next month. So you won't be able to get anything from that. It's not returning to that kind of listening that used to be possible. You won't be able to get any kind of personally identifiable information, not even a username. So we're excited that they are offering this new API. We're going to look at what we can do with it here at Unimetrics. So we'll keep you updated on that for sure. But that's the basics to know about it. But just know that it's not going to bring back the old possibilities for hashtag listening on Instagram like you used to be able to do. So it's not a good idea to plan extensive campaigns that rely on the old style. Like most brands have made that adjustment by now, where you need to do things like tagging and things like that. But it is exciting that we should have some limited listening capabilities in the future. So we will definitely keep you updated.
Good. So maybe if you're going to run a contest, reformat it so you're not relying on hashtags to find random users that posted with that.
You could still possibly do that if you wanted it to be completely random. You won't be able to get the information. Like if you were running a campaign and you wanted to pick a winner, a contest, and you wanted to pick a winner, you could have a specific branded hashtag for that, and then you could you're not going to get information about any of the people through that, but you will be able to click through and find one person. So if you did it totally random that way, it would be possible. That's my understanding of how this is going to work. But again, we don't know yet. It's not available like that yet. So we'll keep you updated, and basically probably don't plan on that.
Facebook's always keeping things interesting.
Yes, keeping us on our toes.
All right. So avoid sticking to the same strategy.
Yeah, if you're still trying to do things the way that we did a year ago, December, that's not going to work out because of all of the changes. But most brands we've seen adjust to this pretty well. You've got to use tagging more. People say, tag our brand in this post, or tag us in a picture, things like that you can do instead of just using hashtags.
And forgetting to check hashtags, because it could be
this is an evergreen suggestion that every once in a while someone still forgets to do, but we just saw someone use DTF in a hashtag. Just don't do that, guys. 5 seconds of research, you'll see that that's not theater festival.
Yeah, it was Dublin Theater Festival.
We love you, Dublin Theater Festival, and maybe that was supposed to be a funny double entendre, but it makes it really hard to track.
Yeah. Not reviewing your copy, so.
Yeah, just basic copy editing, always a good idea.
Yeah, because how often have we seen that?
We all make mistakes, so you get a second pair of eyes on stuff. Tone deaf posts are also really difficult. I mean, with today's 27/365 news cycle, people are always looking at something different to be mad at. But just, keep an eye on things, make sure that you're being thoughtful in what you post, especially when, right now there's wildfires going on in California. So if you had any kind of campaign that maybe used fire sale, rethink that, especially if you're targeting customers in California. Just be thoughtful about what you're sharing, because you don't want to become the next crisis comms example of what not to do.
Exactly.
And if you're looking at planning a crisis comm strategy for 2019, Trendkite has a bunch of resources about that on our blog, blog.trendkite.com, so check that out.
And so we don't want to ignore your audience, especially if they're commenting and engaging, right?
Yes, for sure. Like, don't just post something and then not check all of the replies for like a week. That's generally not a great approach. Your audience will let you know what they are interested in by responding, so you should definitely keep on top of that.
Oh, and what we were talking about.
Crisis plan, you definitely want to have one of those. And if it's just been a while since you ran through it with your team, you know, maybe the team has changed a little bit. The most important thing is knowing who's going to be in charge in a crisis, and you're going to probably have like a chain of command there, and you're going to want to make sure that you have backup people in place because the holidays are coming up. People might be hard to get a hold of. So if you can't get a hold of this person who's supposed to be the point person for your crisis, make sure you know who the next person is. Everyone has access to your crisis plan, to the things that you're going to do. Make sure all that's in place before the holidays when everyone scatters.
Right, and even if you haven't had a crisis recently, or
it's not,
you don't think you're going to have a crisis, you just never know.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And maybe you'll get lucky and it'll be small and it won't become, you know, the big national news story, but it could, so you want to be prepared for that.
And overlooking the power of data.
Yes. Again, always better to build things on solid data, not sketchy data. So make sure that if you're paying someone for analytics, you know where their data is coming from. Don't be afraid to ask hard questions about that. Don't be afraid to ask what it means, who their data providers are, what they've built on, things like that are very important. And always make sure that you're incorporating that into your strategy.
Yeah, because data-driven decisions, I mean, you can feel much more confident with those.
Yeah, it's good to use that and then still leave room for a little experimentation and measure how that experimentation is working going forward.
Yeah, and so in 2019, here are our favorite tips.
Yes, even if you don't have super in-depth analytics available to you, because we understand not everyone has a ton of resources, but you can still do these basic things to get started. Definitely, obviously, you want to review what you put out in 2018, see what performs the best, and see what performed the worst, and then see what you can learn from those two things. Be like, okay, all of our top posts were video posts. Maybe we should do more of that. Maybe we should invest more in that. Was it the style? Was it the timing? Was it just the fact that it's video and our audience is really into that? You know, ask those kinds of questions. Or if you have your worst performing posts were all posted after 9 p.m., you can say like, oh, okay, maybe we shouldn't post so late. Try doing the similar kinds of content to those posts at a different time and see how those perform, things like that.
Yeah. Do an audit.
Yeah, and then always, you know, see what you can do to engage more. Like I've said, it's a good idea to play with all of the features on Instagram stories because a lot of those come to your brand as DMs. It shows that your audience is interested in what you're posting, and it's likely to boost you more in their feed. So play with those if you haven't been.
Yeah, there are tons of features to engage, like whether on your stories or even just replying to their comments on your images.
That's it. Super easy thing to do. Even if they're just posting emojis, you can respond with other emojis.
Yeah.
Just play it by ear in a way that makes sense for your brand.
It humanizes the brand.
Yes, for sure.
Like you said, always leave room for experimentation and measure.
Yes, try something new and then measure to see how it works and then build based on that.
Yeah. Invest more in stories and video.
Yep, as we've talked about, those are the things that Facebook seems to be emphasizing, so it makes sense for brands to at least experiment with that in your strategy.
Yeah. And then, of course, use analytics to make more confident, data-driven decisions. So really measuring the performance of your posts and getting smarter about your strategy.
Yeah, and this is important because things like video maybe are really popular, but that might not actually be what's working for your brand. And if you don't have data to point you in that direction, you won't know. And then you might wonder why all of your new posts aren't working so well.
All right, moving on ahead because we are running short on time. Here are some examples of brands that we think are doing Instagram right. Wild Brand Foods is really cool.
They do a lot of great stuff. I'm a big fan of their nut butters also, so you should definitely check out their Instagram. They have a lot of stories takeovers. They rotate through influencers in a really interesting way. They have people apply for the job. It's their friendly faces, and that way they know that they're really pulling in people from their target audience who are already interested in the brand.
Yeah, and like on this slide, you can see they have user-generated content on the left, behind the scenes kind of stories on in the middle, and then influencer marketing on the right. Like they're really leveraging all different types.
Yeah.
In their stories, so that's pretty cool. Now here's a brand that I do not know how to pronounce.
Neither do I. We're assuming it's something along the lines of Niden. If you know the correct way, feel free to let us know. But they did a really cool campaign where they actually had their audience give feedback on different things they were designing. They had an influencer doing this, like, which one do you like better? So they actually incorporated that into their designs, which is really going to make people feel way more invested in what they are doing and pay more attention in the future because they might want to be able to influence future designs.
Yeah, and I know you wrote a blog post recently on like niche retail and how powerful that is. Like, there's some really niche cult follower groups in there.
The Instagram's a great place for that. It's people who get really invested in your brand and they really want to be part of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then Pantsuit Politics. This is a great podcast that's got it's about politics, but there is no yelling. So if you're interested in that, check it out. But they are investing a lot more in Instagram. They said this on their podcast, and they're going to start an IGTV channel. So it's also kind of fun when you're, listening to a podcast. Sometimes you imagine how people look, and then you get a fun behind the scenes, and you're like, oh. Yeah. And aren't they kind of on both ends of the spectrum?
One of them is conservative, one of them is liberal, and they have actual nuanced conversations about politics. It's fantastic.
It's kind of refreshing.
I know. I highly recommend it.
Cool. So as we kind of come up to the end of the webinar, I wanted to talk real quickly about what social analytics can do for you, and specifically Union Metrics. We have a bunch of awesome premium Instagram analytics that can help you from anything from hashtag recommendations, which can help you find and target new audiences, to follower demographics that can help you get to know your audience, figure out when they're online so you know when to post. We have insights and alerts, so you, like, whenever something really big happens, you know right away. So say like you posted something that got 3 times as many comments or likes as usual, like you want to know what took off or what people are saying.
Or if you're trying to monitor a specific influencer and they tweet about your brand, you can say, or maybe not a specific one, but someone with this many followers tweets at you.
Yeah.
Then pay attention to it, which followers aren't everything, but it's a place to start.
Yeah, and you want to know that stuff right away.
Yeah.
And then we also have engagement metrics. So really in-depth engagement metrics about how your content is performing and how people are engaging with your content. So like what time you should post is the most optimal time to post to get the most engagement, things like that. And then it can also help you determine what types of content to post, like videos or images. And then finally, some of our most popular analytics are our story analytics.
Yeah, we can tell you how your stories are performing.
Yeah, don't we kind of say stories are like the wild, wild west?
Yeah, as people are figuring that out, so we can really show you what's performing and what's not, and having it all in one place with everything else makes it a lot easier to incorporate that in your overall strategy.
Yeah, everyone's trying to figure out how they can better leverage story analytics or stories. So having analytics to kind of give you insights into what you can do better makes all the difference.
And not have to screenshot each thing and then put it together in a report.
Right, exactly. Like you archive your data. So yeah. And as Sarah mentioned earlier in this webinar, we are now a part of Trendkite.
Yep. So the Trendkite family.
Yeah, we are bringing together social media, influencer management, and media monitoring to have the ultimate digital PR platform. And so just real quickly, I'll go through this. We are calling it digital PR because you can analyze all your earned media, social media, influencers, target audiences, You can manage your influencers, your pitches, your social campaigns, work on your relationships with journalists, and create more, better, stickier relationships. Also tracking your SEO impact and web traffic from your PR efforts, and really bridging the gap between your marketing and communications teams.
Yeah, basically digital PR is everything you're already doing as a communications professional. We're just giving you a new framework that can make it easier to communicate everything that you do and how valuable it is to everyone else that you work with.
Yeah, that's right there. So I'm going to launch a poll to see if you would like to learn more about either Unionmetrics social media analytics, or the Turnkite Digital platform, which also encompasses the social media analytics too. So if you are looking for maybe a bigger solution for your marketing and PR team, go for the Turnkite Digital PR platform, or if you're just looking for social media analytics, specifically Instagram analytics, hit the first one, Unionmetrics.
Yeah, so we'll be happy to help you out either way, and if not, you don't hurt our feelings, but maybe come back later if you get more budget. And we want to be respectful of your time, but we would love to take a few quick questions if you are willing to stick around and have some.
Yeah, we are running over time, and I apologize for that because we had a bit of a late start, but we
also had a lot today.
Instagram is a big topic.
It is.
And it's evidenced by all these questions we have coming in. So let's see. How do you feel about engagement pods and has Instagram caught on?
I would be really surprised if Instagram hasn't caught on to the engagement pods. For those of you who don't know, this is when a bunch of people join like a messaging group, like a big group DM, and you all agree to like and comment on each other's posts. So everyone will sort of send them out in the group after they've posted them to make sure that everyone sees them. This has been a reaction to the non-chronological timeline and the fact that sometimes people miss each other's posts. So this is a way for everyone who's, maybe it's a group of dog accounts, maybe it's a bunch of fitness influencers, lifestyle influencers. They usually have some kind of niche in common. And so it makes sense for them to be boosting each other's posts. There are probably some unrelated ones. I feel like Instagram would be more likely to catch onto those if it's clear that it's a bunch of people who don't know each other in real life that are just doing this to game the algorithm. But for the most part, it still takes some hands-on effort, and you still have to go and like and comment on their posts and things like that. So they haven't banned it unless you're going to do something really spammy with it. But it has its pros and cons, like any other approach that's trying to get around the algorithm. Can't say I would outright encourage you to do it in case Instagram does decide that it's a little below the board, but we'll see how that strategy plays out over time.
Right. Let's see.
We might take some of these questions and turn them into a blog post, so if we don't get to yours, don't worry about it.
Any tips on owning a competitive hashtag?
Ooh, that's a good one. So now that you can follow hashtags in your feed line, I can't talk, your timeline, your feed, whatever. That's a good way. Maybe you want to look at a couple of industry hashtags and you'll keep an eye on them that way, because when you follow a hashtag, it's not going to show you every single post on that hashtag unless it's like a really small one. But it'll show you some of the top ones. So that's a good idea to see just regularly when you're checking the app anyway what the most popular content is, which can give you a good idea of how you should be designing your own, and then maybe you'll start to see more of your own posts in there. That's a good organic way to do it, so it doesn't feel too forced, and you're learning over time as your audience and the audience for that hashtag how their tastes are changing. So that's how I would go about doing that.
There's some questions about, how there's that 10,000 follower limit to be able to put a link in your
story, yeah.
And also like adding shoppable tags to your posts. There's some thresholds.
Yeah.
Do you maybe have any advice for the smaller brands that don't have access to those features?
I know that's really frustrating. So one thing that we do, because we do not have 10,000 followers, you can have a link in your bio, and that's a pretty standard practice, is just to change out the link in your bio. So that can be a little frustrating if someone's looking at an older post and then your link is no longer there. There are also some third-party providers, I forget what a lot of them are called, but they exist. You can use them to where anytime someone clicks on your bio, it will direct them to sort of a grid, and they can click on the post that they're interested in, and then that will take them there. So it's a bit of a workaround. We'll see if Instagram changes any of this in the future, but I don't see them adding a lot of linking capabilities because it's not really what the site is about. Maybe they will expand that to smaller brands in the future, but we will just have to see.
Awesome. Well, we are running quite a bit over time.
Yeah.
And we have seriously so many questions coming in. So I would like to take these all offline and compile them.
We will definitely turn these into a blog post for you. So keep an eye on unionmetrics.com/blog. We'll make sure to tweet about it when it goes up, post about it on Facebook, wherever you, and Instagram, wherever you like to find us. But yeah, thank you guys all so much for coming, for all your smart questions, and for your participation. This has been really fun.
Yeah, this has been awesome, and I'd like to thank Sarah for sharing her expertise with us because she has seriously all the best tips. So
I spend too much time on Instagram, so you're profiting off of my wasted life.
It's not a waste of it. So thank you guys. Have a good week, and yeah.
Yeah, thanks so much. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.